Hey everyone, it's Jack, and today I'm gonna switch it up a little bit and we're gonna create an app, a Magick 8-ball app. Yes, and this ought to be fun. We're gonna create it in an IDE called Lazarus. Lazarus is a free Pascal integrated development environment with its own built-in GUI designer, and it's one of the most complete free and open source developing apps that I've ever really come across, and I really love it. It's just a great environment to program in. And you might also be thinking, what? I don't know the first thing about programming. Well, if you fall into that camp, that's okay, because you can follow along and create your own app without even knowing how to program. And then you'll have bragging rights to all your friends, because you can say, I created this app. And they'll be like, whoa, you have a whole new genius side that I never even knew about. Awesome. So yeah, check it out. And also I'm going to leave a link in the description below so you can also download the source code and get the application itself from my GitHub website. That way you can kind of play with it if you don't want to make one yourself, or if you don't want to follow along, or you follow along and you get stuck for some reason. You can check out my source code. So yes, let's get to it. And so Lazarus, what the heck is Lazarus? If you've never used it before, and especially if you're not a programmer, well, Lazarus is something, if you're on Linux, it's available right in your package manager, but I would recommend going out to getlazarus.org. GetLazarus.org is a website where this person, or persons maybe, have the binaries installers set up so that Lazarus installs already kind of pre-configured in a desirable way. Because by default, Lazarus has kind of all separate windows, which to me is kind of messy. I think a lot of people don't really like that kind of setup. So his script actually pre-compiles it so your IDE environment is all docked into one environment, so all the windows are together and you don't have to activate extra packages from within your software. It's already done for you. And so that's kind of nice, especially if you're a beginner. So that's why I kind of recommend just going out to this site here and getting it from here. And of course, Lazarus is something you can use in Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. So it doesn't matter what operating system you're on. And the other cool thing is, if you're a programmer, you kind of know what you're doing, you can compile your apps for other operating systems. So if you're a Windows user and you want to compile it and make a binary for Macintosh or Linux, you can do that too. How cool is that? Right from the same machine. You don't even have to go on another machine to do it. That's another really cool thing. And you can make binaries for a lot more than just Windows, Mac, and Linux. You can also make them for Java or for Android and a bunch of other things. There's a whole list of them on their website. So anyways, I'm rambling. So let's get to it. And real quick, I also want to do a special shout out to Alan Perry. Alan, thank you so much for your support of my channel. I appreciate the brewski. And also to Mislav Kresla. I hope I pronounced that right, Mislav. If not, sorry. But anyways, thank you too so much for your continued support. Mislav has been supporting me for a long time. I've never really sent out a shout out or thanks before, so yes, thank you both. Double thumbs up. Appreciate that. Really helps keep the channel popping. So wonderful. And then, oh yeah, and I almost forgot about Derek. Wow. Derek Taylor. He also sent me, wait a minute. That's a bill. What? A bill? Oh, $1,200 for monitors? That's weird, because I improved his monitors, if I remember right. He was having to move his mouse too far to the right all the time, and so I kind of modified them so he didn't have to do that so much. Must have me mixed up with someone else. Oh well. That's the way it goes. I'll just toss it in the trash. And with that, let's move onward and upward. Okay, then when you open Lazarus for the first time, it'll look a little bit like this. Maybe not exactly, but kind of like this, and you'll have your new project wizard here. And so the first thing you'd want to start off with, of course, is a new project, because we're going to create our Magick 8-ball. Just hit New Project. And then it's going to ask you for a type here, and by default application is selected, and that's what we want, is a full graphical application. So we're just going to hit OK, and then it opens up our code window here. And then you'll see down here on this tab towards the bottom half, you got code and designer, and when you click designer, you'll see a designer area. Now I'm using a dark theme, so the window is looking a little bit dark. I'm going to just make that a little bit bigger too. I just grabbed the corner just to kind of stretch it out a little bit, and you can do the same thing if you like. So this is our graphical designer where we can drag widgets into the area. And so if you go up here, you'll see tabs up here that say standard, additional, common controls, and so forth, and just a bunch of stuff across there. And standard is where it starts out on the first tab, and you have things in here like your main menu, buttons, labels, text fields, and all kinds of different stuff like that, checkboxes. And so those are like our widgets and so forth that we can just pop in here. Then under additional, we got more stuff like picture, images, shapes, and all that, just on down the line. What we're going to really be using today are a couple of items out of standard and additional. So this is going to be really easy to do, and I think you'll have a lot of fun. And back in our code designer, this is where we'll be entering some simple code, and I'll just kind of explain along the way, so it'll be a breeze even if you're a non-programmer. And also, the IDE has something called code completion, which if you're starting to type something in there, it can kind of guess what you're trying to do, and it'll offer some suggestions to complete your code. And so that's a nice feature that you get generally in an IDE. By default, those completions will pop up in a delayed manner, so it might take a second or two before that pops up when you're typing. I like to have it pop up right away, so what I did when I first installed Lazarus, which was quite a while ago, I went up to Tools, and then Options, and in here you got this big complicated looking window, and if you scroll down in the left hand menu here, and you just kind of go all the way down to completion and hints, that's underneath the mouse category. And when you click on that, that shows your delay here. And by default, I think your delay is way up here, like, I don't remember where it's at, but like a few hundred milliseconds or something. But you can just push it all the way back here. I just made it all the way back to 10. That's like the minimum. And that way you'll get a lot quicker response out of that. And then your hints is another little kind of window that'll show you some hints. And I back that off too down to around 155. So if you like things moving a little faster when it comes to hints and code completion, that's just a little tip for you there. You can speed it up by just going in there as well. So cool and groovy. Let's get started. Let's play. We're going to make a Magick 8-ball, so I'm going to go back here in the designer, and the first thing we have here is a blank form. And if I go up here, we got this little arrow. It's our run, and if we click that, that'll launch our app. So there we go. So here's our form. So here it's showing you we just have a blank form, and by default it's called form 1. So I'm going to close that, and right over here you can see our form properties, and then we have some other tag like event, favorites, and restricted. Typically we would just need to use properties and events. So I'm going to click on the properties tab here, and then if we scroll down a little bit, you'll see something here called caption, and by default it's form 1. So I'm going to just give that a title, and we can call that anything. I'm just going to call it like Jack's Magick 8-ball. And sorry, it's a little hard to see because of the dark theme here. But now that we did that, I can go up here and just hit save, or the save all, either one. And then it's going to ask us to give us a name for our project. So I'm just going to go into our Lazarus stable. Now on your computer, if you just did a fresh install, it's probably going to default you into documents directory or somewhere. So you can just navigate to wherever it's convenient for you to save your project. I'm going to go in here, and I already created a folder called projects inside my Lazarus folder. So if I jump in here, I can just go up here and create a folder, and then we could just give it a name like Magick 8-Ball. And then I'll just press save. Oops, let me do that again. So I'm going to go in here, projects, create folder, and for some reason that didn't take. I screwed something up there. So let's go with that again. So Magick 8-Ball, 8-B-A-L-L, and then I'm going to press enter. And now we're inside the Magick 8-Ball folder, and now I'm just going to hit save. And here we got project 1 for the name of the project, but if you want to call this something else like 8-Ball or something, you can name it here. And then this project 1, your executable is going to be the same as the project name. So if we wanted to call it like 8-Ball, we could just change our project name to 8-Ball like that, and then hit save. And then when we execute it, like if you're in Windows, then your executable will be called 8ball.exe. So I'm just going to hit save, and it didn't like the project name. So it's probably because it's got a number in it. So I'll just call it M8, and I'll spell out 8, E-I-G-H-T. And then capitalize the B in ball there. So now we got M8-Ball. And so again, you can name it pretty much anything you want as long as it doesn't have a number in it. And now it's going to come up again and ask us for the name of our default source code page, which is unit 1 by default, .pas. PAS stands for Pascal, which is the programming language. And I like to just leave it the way it is. I think it's fine, just unit 1. So I'm going to hit save. And so now we got our whole project saved in that folder that we named Magick 8-Ball in our Lazarus folder. So that's where it is if I ever need to go look for it and grab a copy of that binary and share it with all my friends. Okay, so now that we got that saved, let's launch it again. And there it is. Okay, so we have our blank form. Looking good, and it has our caption up there, Jack's Magick 8-Ball. Cool. So now let's see. Oh, by the way, I have 2 up here, and you're probably only seeing 1. I think by default it's the debug, but I have one that's run without debug. Right click over the toolbar, select options, and here you got all this stuff. And if you select IDE Coolbar, then here's where you can add an extra bar just by clicking add. So if you don't see it there already, just add it in there, IDE Coolbar. Otherwise, just go to configure. And so I picked it out over on the left side. So like if I take that out, this is kind of what it looked like before. So I just had this run here. So if you want to add in the other thing, run without debugging, then here's where you go, run menu commands. And then it's right here in the list. So you would just hit the little arrow and it'll add it into the list. And then if it's not in the right order, you can just use these up and down arrow keys. So just select your item and just move it up and down, and it'll put it in the order you want. So easy peasy. Just thought I'd throw that in there in case anybody noticed that and wanted to have it in their toolbar. All right. So now let's put some stuff in here. So what we want to do is we want to go and click on our additional tab. And then here we got all these different widgets here, and I want to put in a shape. That's what this is. So if I click that and then click inside the form, and it puts in a rectangle by default. Nice. And then over here we got all our properties. And so here under brush, that's a pretty important property. And then click inside, and then we have this rectangle. And then if we go down here, we got shape here in our properties list, and it's a rectangle by default. And then you got all these other shapes, triangle, ellipse, but we're going to select circle here, and then it changes into a circle. Nice. And then we can just grab a handle on the corner there and just make it bigger like that. And then maybe on the sides if you want to widen it a little bit, but it'll keep its aspect ratio, so it'll stay perfectly round. And then we can just do that. But actually the anchoring is a better way to do it, because that way it's going to stick to the sides no matter what side your window is. So if we go to anchors here and click this little icon with the 3 dots, you get this anchor window. And so here, like for the top, we can parent it to our form, which is the form, of course. And then it's parented to the top, and then you have your position icons. So here we can go to the left side of the form, and here we have our left position, which is selected. So that is good, but we also want to stick it to the right side and see how it's there. So we got to select our right hand position icon here, so it is parented to that. And then again, for the bottom, we want to select our bottom icon, so it parents to the bottom of the form, and then select our form as a sibling. So now we have all 4 of them checked, and when I launch this, then that circle should grow with the window when I expand the window, and it does. So that's all good. And then I can make it bigger, full screen, and the circle is still there, and it's perfectly fit inside the parameter of the form. Nice. And now here's our brush settings. This is important. So I'm going to click this little plus sign here and open these properties. So we got our style and our color. So we want to change the color because right now it just looks like a cue ball, but we want it to look like an 8 ball. So I'm going to hit black here. And so now we got a black color, and that's more like a 8 ball. Nice. So now if I launch this, now Jack's 8 ball has a big black circle in the middle. So now we're getting somewhere. Yay! So let's do another shape, and I click right inside the ball there, and we get another rectangle. And so this one's called shape 2, and we're going to go in here, and we're also going to make this round. So we'll select circle, and then I'm going to make this a little bigger. I'll just grab the side handle there, maybe the bottom handle, and we'll just kind of grow that out a little bit, and that kind of looks like an 8 ball there. If you want it more reasonable, now see there, right there, that looks like a tire, so that's why I want to have it offset a little bit or a donut or something. So let me make that a little bit bigger, just because we're going to have a triangle in there for our messages. And then let's make the color. Let's see, the original 8 ball toy has like a dark purple liquid in it, I think, or filter. So I selected my color selector here, and that was the little side icon just like with the previous thing, and just gonna make that a dark purple, and that looks better. That I think is pretty good there. I think I might have nailed that. And now let's give that more definition. It's kind of blending in. Here we got pen, and if I open up the properties on this for the pen, we see that the border is black. So let's make our border lighter. So we can choose like a lighter color in that list, but I like using the color picker, and that way it kind of eliminates any variances in templates and stuff with different themes on somebody's OS. So there we go, and now we got a kind of a light gray border there, and that kind of gives it better definition. So I like that. And again, let's anchor this in here too. This is our shape 2, and we're going to anchor it to shape 1. So again, we'll choose that as our sibling, and this is shape 1 and shape 2. So you can actually name those if you want something different, but by default they're just shape 1 and 2. And yeah, the middle is 2 in the middle, so I'm just going to anchor it to the top and then add numbers in here for our border space, and like 100 I'll put it there. So if I back it off a little bit, maybe to 60, yeah, that looks pretty good actually. And if I want to tweak it a little more, I can hit these arrows here and just kind of click on that, or I can hold it down and it'll slide faster. And then here I'm going to do the same on the left, except I'm going to hit the center position icon, and then just going to tweak that down a little bit again from the top. So maybe change that to 70-ish. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, and then over here I'll just enable this guy and enable the bottom, but I don't think I really have to pick a sibling, so I think I might be good with that. And then we'll add one more shape, and shape 3 is what this one's going to be, and this one will make a triangle. This is a thing that's going to display our answer. So let's go into our shape and let's find a triangle, and that's right in, well, there it is. Okay, so there's a triangle. Actually, I think that ought to be maybe upside down. So there we go. So we'll select the upside down triangle, and then we'll grab a handle and make that bigger. We'll just kind of slide it into position. Of course, we're going to use our anchoring, so that'll make it more centered, but we'll just kind of get it roughly where it ought to go. I'll kind of put it right in there somewhere. Okay, so that looks good. Now I'm going to go back, and we're going to probably make this a different color too, because that's like way too white. So why don't I go over here first and do our anchoring, and then we'll kind of do the same thing. We'll anchor it to shape 2, because that's like the circle, the purple one. And then we'll do the same thing, but we'll just try, let's see, 30, and then we'll just kind of slide it with the arrow, up arrow. So right around 43-ish. And then here we'll anchor this to shape 2, which is our purple circle, and select the center icon to center it. And so that looks pretty good. And let's launch it and see how it looks so far. And looking good. Okay, nice. So far, no errors. I like it. I rarely get them anyways. I forgot to check these. I want to do my right and bottom anchoring too. So I want to have all 4 of those checked. And then I'm going to change the color. So I'll click on this and then select my color palette and go back to purple. And we want to make this a little bit lighter than the background purple. So let's take a look at that. Yeah, that could be pretty good. Yeah, that works. And here's our style. Now, our brush style, this is where, like, if I select that, it goes clear and you just see an outline there. That's actually going to be important a little bit later, because we're going to want this clear for a short time. But see, these are all different styles that you can apply to it, but solid is the default. And so we're going to kind of come back to that a little bit later, because I want that to turn clear when we click on that triangle later. So we're going to get to that pretty quick. And the way we're going to make that happen is through events. And so an event is going to be automatically created here in the Code Explorer by going into this Events tab. And when we go in here, we have our triangle selected. And if I go down here to, it doesn't have an on-click event, but so I'm using a mouse event, which is on mouse up. And so I would go in there and just double click in that, and then it'll automatically create the event code for us in the code editor, which is really cool. And so when you click your mouse and then let up on your mouse, then this event gets triggered. And so here it is. This is our event that's associated with this shape, which is our triangle. And so if I go in here and if I write some code, it's going to do whatever I write there when you click on that triangle. So events are really easy to do, and they're super important. So one more thing, I want to go up here and add a label. So I just clicked on my standard tab and selected the label. And this label is where our messages are going to be. So when we activate our Magick 8-ball, the messages are going to pop up right in this label. And so again, I'm going to anchor this label because I want to get it centered properly. So I'm anchoring it to the top, and then I'm going to just push it down by adjusting these numbers here. And I'm thinking right in there somewhere is pretty good. You can eyeball it to your taste. And then over here, again, sibling to our triangle and the center icon, and then these two with no sibling, right and bottom. So I think that's going to do the trick. We'll kind of see as we go, because I might have to tweak that a little bit more. And then here under our font style, I'm going to select bold and just kind of make that bolder. And then our size, I think I'm going to make it a little bigger, maybe 12. We'll try that. And of course, you can make it smaller, or just leave it where it was at the default if you like. But for me, it kind of looks good, a little bit bigger. And then our color, I think I'm going to actually brighten that up. I'm going to choose maybe a white. And that might be a good idea in case your theme on your desktop, makes a color change. So sometimes it's good to specifically state that it's white instead of, a default color, because it might show up black on another machine. So here I just changed the label. The caption, instead of having label 1, I made it 3 dots, but you can see it's not quite centered. So I'm going to go here to alignment, and in the drop down you can see TA center. That will make sure that all your text is centered. So if you have multiple lines too, then it'll all be centered instead of justified. So that's going to look a lot better too. So that's important. You want to kind of center it. So let's go back to our events, and I selected my triangle here again. So I'm back in my triangle click event, my mouse up where I was before. And so we're going to put something in here. The first thing I want to do is when I click on that triangle, I would like the brush style to go clear instead of solid. And so here you see the property clear. So I want it to do that when I click on it. And you'll understand why in a second. When we click on it, it's going to go clear and then pause for a second and then reveal our answer. So that's ultimately kind of what we want to do here. So I'm going to remember this. We have brush and style. Those are the properties associated with this shape. So if I go down here and I type that shape name in here, which is called shape 3, then if I do shape 3 dot and then brush, which is what we were looking at in the property thing, and then dot style, see that all corresponds to this right here. And then you see that BS bold, but we want it to go to BS clear. And see, this assignment operator is not an equals, but it's a colon equals. In Pascal, it's colon. Here it's showing BS clear. So that's what we're going to type here. So we're going to assign it BS clear. So now when we click on it, it's going to change from BS solid to BS clear, hopefully. So let's launch this and see if it works. And we'll see if our event worked. Click, and it did. So it went clear. Beautiful. Now, after about a second, we want that to go back to solid and then display a message. So how are we going to do that? Well, believe it or not, easy peasy. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create, first of all, I'm going to change the name here. For clarification, I'm going to call this label message. That way it just kind of makes the label easier to identify. And then down here, I'm going to type in label underscore message dot caption, and we're going to make that just blank. So 2 single quotes right there. And so that's going to clear our text. So when we click on it, then not only is the triangle going to go into a clear state, but our text is going to disappear too, because we want to have nothing there when it's in its state of picking something. So now I clicked on system, and I want to click on timer here, and then just click inside the form. And this is our timer placeholder here, our object. And so this timer is called timer 1. And you can see up here, if we click on events, oh, by the way, this interval right here, that's 1,000. That means 1,000 milliseconds. So this timer by default will pause for 1 second before it does something. And so on timer is the event we want. So all we got to do is just double click in there, and it automatically creates this event function just like before for the triangle. And then up here you can see that these procedures are declared for you. So the software just does everything for you. It's really great. And so this is a procedure, and you might be familiar with functions if you program, then you definitely would be. A procedure is simply a function that doesn't return a value, kind of like a void in C++, if you've ever done that. So that's really the only difference between a procedure and a function. Otherwise, if you need to return a value, just make a function. And a function is declared the same way up there too. But for you non-programmers, not even anything to worry about. So anyways, I'm going to make an event here in my form too. I just clicked on my form. I need to select it up here in this object inspector. Now it's selected. So on create, I want to go in here and create an on create event. What this is this form create. This is stuff we're going to put in here when you launch your application and the form pops up. When it first pops up and your application is launching, I want it to do stuff. And one thing I want it to do is call a randomize function. This will activate a function that causes random numbers to be generated. And it's based on the system clock. So, the randomize function is really cool. And we want to start it right at form startup and not when we click on our triangle. And then we're going to enable our timer, or turn it off actually, because we don't want our timer running by default when the form is created, when we launch our app. So we're putting that in there so that the timer is turned off. And then these are all our objects up here. And then here is where we can declare our variables. And one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a string list, because we want to put all our answers into a list. That way we can access that list, and the Magick 8 Ball is going to randomly pick stuff. And we're going to call this list answers. and then I'm going to put a colon in there. That assigns a type to this variable, and the type of variable is going to be called a t-string list. And so a t-string list is, for you programmers, is kind of like an array, but it's a list. It's kind of a thin line between the two. So anyways, t-string list dot create here. So that's going to create right here at the form create, right at the beginning. And then the next thing we want to do is add things to our list. So answers is our t-string list. So answers.add, and then we'll put something in here, like our first answer could be yes. And I got yes in single quotes here. And then to add more answers, I just simply repeat the whole process. So I'm just going to copy and paste it. And then maybe we'll have like 4 answers. And then I'm going to take yes and change that to no. So our second item in the list is no. And then in this one, maybe we'll make it like, we could say absolutely! Explanation point. And then we're going to do a plus because we're going to tack something onto that. So plus, and then we're going to type S line break. This is going to be a line break because we want to make a new line and then put some text underneath it. And then put another plus because we're going to tack it onto another string. So I'm going to type a single quote and then I'm going to say go for it. So single quote, and then we'll type go for it, explanation, and then single quote. So now we got a multi-line response here. And then we'll do the same thing on the next line. On this one, let's just say ask. We'll say ask again later, but we're going to separate each word with a line break again. And so we'll do that and then type in again in single quotes and then another line break and then we'll do later. And the reason we do line break is because line break is universal to all the different operating systems. So that's why we have this variable here, which is part of the IDE. So now we got ask again later, all both separated by line breaks. So that looks pretty good. That should kind of complete our list, I think. That looks good. And at any time, you can add more into that list if you want, or take some out. So now, if we go here into our timer, this timer is going to be activated when we click. So right here, the timer is turned off by default. But when we go into our click event, when we click on that triangle, we want to turn the timer on. I'm going to put timer1.enabled is true. And when the enabled shows up in the hint list there, all you got to do is press enter and it'll autocomplete for you and put in the colon equals automatically for you, which is nice. So now in our timer, this is all the stuff that's going to happen after we click. And so it's calling to this timer. And I just put a var, V-A-R, designation up here because we got to create a variable. So I typed in I colon integer. So we're creating a variable called I. And the type of variable it is an integer, which is a number, to put it simply. So that number is going to represent an item in this list up there because this list has indexes that start at 0. So I equals, and this is going to be assigned to a random number. So we're going to call a function in Lazarus called random. So I equals random, and then it's going to be our string list called answers.count. So what that's saying essentially, and I put a colon at the end, is answers.count means the total number of indexes here in our list, which there's 4 items in there, so the list goes from 0 to 3. So I is going to randomly pick a number between 0 and 3 and use that as the index for the answer that we're going to get. So that timer is going to run this automatically. So now we're going to take our label and we're going to do label underscore message dot caption, and I pressed enter again to autocomplete. And then we're going to say answers, and then we're going to make a bracket because we're going to reference the index, and the index is going to be I. I is that random number that gets generated. So now this random number from our count is going to be called from our answers array or our answers list, the index. So now it should randomly grab one of those indexes from our answer list and give us an answer when we click the timer. So let's see if it blows up. But first, I also want to turn off the timer because after it does all this stuff, on top of that, I also want to turn our triangle back to solid. And I think I'll do that first. So here we got, it turns clear when we click on our triangle, but after 1 second in the timer, we want it to go back to solid. So I'm just going to paste this here, and then I'm going to change clear to solid. So that way our triangle goes back to solid. Now I'm going to turn off my timer. So here we got our timer is turned on when we click our shape, but when the timer is done, we want it to go off. So timer 1 enabled equals false. So that'll turn it back off after 1 second. So all this stuff is going to happen after 1 second. So it calls the timer runs for a second, and then boom. So let's launch it and see what happens. And something exploded. Wow. Okay. I guess I did something wrong in my code. Probably right in the form create, because it happened before it even started. Yeah. So something I got there in the form create, maybe related to the string list or index or something. Let's see. There it is. That was really dumb. Okay. Well, I got string list create, but I didn't actually reference it to our string list, which is called answers, our variable. So that was dumb. So what I got to do is over here, I'm going to type in answers, and we're going to assign that to our string list, which is : equals. And now we got answers : equals string list dot create. Okay. So yeah, it didn't know what to assign that to. So yes, it's assigned to answers. Now it should work. Unless something else blows up. All right, so let's click it and see if it pauses for a second. And there it is. Yay, we got a no. Excellent. And let's click it again. There we go. So it is randomly picking things out. There's yes and okay. Looks like our text is not expanding there. I'm not sure what that's part of. Must be part of absolutely, looks like. Okay, so I would say that has something to do with our anchoring because it's not really expanding properly. So let's go back to properties, selecting our text, and I'm going to go into our auto sizes check, so I can rule that out. Let's go into anchors and see what we can do here. So maybe for the text, I might want to maybe add siblings to the right and bottom, add the shape 3 thingy, because I'm not really seeing any problem anywhere else. Centered, I think that should be centered. I mean, if I click this guy, it's just going to push it to the left. So, but what if I leave that left and then I select the sibling here and then put that on the right? I wonder how that would work. Maybe I could do that. And again, the sibling is shape 3. So let's try that. So I'm going to launch it real quick and see if that stretches it out. And then we'll try to get a long answer. Well, okay. It did stretch it out, but nothing underneath. So I guess I'm going to have to anchor it to the bottom too. I think I only did the sides there. Yeah, so that's all good there. So yeah, this should have came out there. Ask again later. Everything underneath that should have showed up, and same with absolutely. So I'm going to do that. So back in here, I'll just go in our anchor again, and we'll just do the same thing for the bottom here. We'll just go to the sibling and select shape 3, which is our triangle, and then select the bottom icon because we want it to expand to the bottom of the triangle. So now it should expand up to the top, the 2 sides, right and left, and the bottom. So that all looks good. So now let's open it up and see if I think this is going to work now. So click on our triangle, and there we go. That's better. Ask again later. Yay! And I notice when I'm in the text area, it doesn't do anything because we got to make our text, we got to give it the same event code for clicking text as we do clicking the triangle, because otherwise the text is in the way and it won't do anything if you're clicking where the text is. So I'm going to fix that too. Anyways, back in our code designer, if I go down here, so in our form create, this is all good. And by the way, like we can copy this here, and at any point in time, you can just add new lines in here anytime you want, because it's already part of the variable. And so we could go in here and type something else like what do you, and then maybe over here type in nuts with a question mark and a bunch of exclamation points. What are you, nuts? So yeah, that would be kind of cool. Or if you want to just use more vague answers like it's decidedly so, or it is likely, or something like that, you can do that too. So now let's click on it and see if what are you, nuts shows up. Am I a super genius? No. Hey, what am I paying you for? So I want to go in here and on mouse up click event for the text. So this is our text message. So we want to do the same thing when we click on our text. So I'm going to take the code that we used for our triangle, and I'm just going to copy this and paste it down for our text click event as well. So that way it does the same thing whether we click on our text or triangle. Now I'm going to select this and I pressed Shift Tab. That allowed everything to tab backwards instead of tabbing forward. Now let's launch it. And now if I click on the text, then the event works. So there you go. What are you, nuts? So that's working. So whether I click on the triangle or I click on the text itself, it still activates the timer event. So cool, that's great. Now it's working. Absolutely, go for it. And that's what it's trying to say when it says, should you try following along with this tutorial? And the answer is absolutely, go for it. So yeah, that's our Magick 8-ball. And I hope you really enjoyed this tutorial. I know it's a little bit different than what I normally do, like the Linux reviews, or occasionally I'll review some software like a video editor or something. A long time ago I used to do a lot of programming tutorials, but I haven't really done any in forever. So I thought it'd be kind of fun just to kind of throw something in there. Lazarus is such a nice, easy IDE to use that even somebody that's not familiar with programming could follow along with this and just create something just for bragging rights or just for something to do. Heck, it's a good way to pass the time on a dog day afternoon. So yeah, this is actually an app that you might have some fun with it. So I wanted to do something simple and fun, and so I hope this was really helpful. And if it was, don't forget to leave that thumbs up and hit subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.